Hey, y'all. This is Rachel with the Friendly City Books podcast. I am here with Rob Renzetti. This is the second time we have gotten to talk to Rob. He's the author of the middle grade novel, The Horrible Bag of Terrible Things, and now the sequel, The Twisted Tower of Endless Torment. Horrible bag, yeah. Twisted Tower. Nice.
I should have practiced that.
That's okay. So yeah, I got to talk with Rob last year around this time when The Horrible Bag of Terrible Things came out. So I'm really excited to talk to you about book 2. I just read it, finished reading it recently, and it was so fun. I was really excited to see how everything progressed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for anyone who is not aware, just a quick refresher bio for Rob. He is a veteran of TV animation whose work on Cartoon Network's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends earned him an Emmy. There you go. Mm-hmm. He created My Life as a Teenage Robot for Nickelodeon. He's worked on various shows as a storyboard artist, a writer, editor, director, producer. His credits recently include co-executive producer for Netflix's Kid Cosmic, executive producer on the first 2 seasons of Disney's Big City Greens, and supervising producer for Disney's Gravity Falls, which is one of my favorite shows. So, and you've also written a few books for Disney. Mm-hmm. So you wrote some Gravity Falls books. It was Dipper's and Mabel's Guide to Mystery and Nonstop Fun, Gravity Falls Journal 3. Yeah. And then you wrote a DuckTales book, DuckTales Solving Mysteries and Rewriting History, and Onward Quests of Yore.
Yes.
So, writer, animator, a Renaissance man.
That's a bit of abuse of that term, I think, but okay, thank you.
So what have you been up to since we talked last? I mean, I know writing the second book in this series, but anything else?
A couple things. I've been back at Disney working on Big City Greens. I worked on. They did a special, TV movie special, I guess you would call it, not a theatrical movie, but like a movie feature length story where the Greens go to outer space. I actually hold on. I have my favorite character that appears in that, Cookie. This little experimental alien creature that Tilly Green encounters and befriends. This is the plush they made for the crew. So I worked on that as the supervisor, timing supervisor, basically. And then I've been working on the normal Big City Greens television series after that, just doing some freelance timing for them. Part-time while I was finishing up book 2, and I'm now also working on book 3 of the Horrible Bag series.
Yay.
And in addition to that, I've been writing something else on the side for fans of my show, My Life as a Teenage Robot. I started a newsletter last year at Rob. You can sign up at robrenzetti.com. There's a newsletter page on my website. And for fans of a Teenage Robot, it was 20 years ago last August. It celebrated it premiered 20 years ago from there. It's coming up on 21 years. It premiered in August of 2003. So in August of 2023, I started a new Teenage Robot story strictly for fans of my newsletter. It's like a serialized old like Dickens tale where it appears a chapter at a time in your inbox. And chapter 20 will be out tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fun.
I usually release them every 2 or 3 weeks on a Tuesday. So if you're a fan of Teenage Robot, you can sign up on my website, and you'll get a new chapter in your box every couple of weeks, detailing a new story. First time I've done anything with those characters in over 20 years. So it's been fun. I've enjoyed going back and visiting my old characters, and the fans seem to like it. So I've been writing that kind of as the same time I write book 2 and book 3 of the Horrible Bag series.
Nice. That sounds really fun. I love the serialized webcomic format. It's always something to look forward to.
Well, this is prose with some illustrations. So even though I'm an author, I'm author and an illustrator, I mostly have just been writing. And actually, Alex Kerwin, who is the art director of the original series, started doing the illustrations, and now Heather Martinez, who's one of my storyboard artists, has taken over. So not every chapter has an illustration with it, but every once in a while. There is one, and this week actually has what I call it's kind of like a comic splash page. It's a big illustration. I think fans will get a kick out of it. I don't want to spoil it. They'll know more. They'll know what I'm talking about tomorrow. But
okay.
But yeah, every few chapters in, I'd have an illustration or something like that. So
Nice. Well, sounds like you've been keeping busy with fun stuff.
Yeah, trying to.
Well, so let's talk about the Twisted Tower of Endless Torment.
Please.
Um, so I guess we may end up with a few mild spoilers for book one to discuss book two.
I can
I think
talk
that'll be
around them,
fine.
but at the same time, if we alert those that the things might be spoiled, I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, so when we left our main characters, Zenith and Apogee, at the end of book one, I don't think it's that big a spoiler to say they escaped from the world of Grabog, the magical land inside the creepy bag that was left on their doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have switched places, sort of. Whereas Apogee was the older sibling, she is now mysteriously the younger sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And book two has them going back into the bag, supposedly to make Apogee 14 again.
Yep.
And they find chaos and a brewing rebellion. So, were you excited to dive back into the bag
Well,
to
very,
write
very,
book
yeah,
two?
very much so. Originally when I did the first book just on my own as kind of a challenge, creative challenge to myself to get it done and see if there was something worthwhile. And when I eventually got to like draft 4, draft 5, after showing it to some close friends, I went out and tried to get a literary agent, was able to, and we did another draft of the book, and then Penguin picked it up. So I sat with that first story for a very, very long time, but part of the package we sent to Penguin at the urging of my literary agent had like a page description of a possible second book and a paragraph description of a third book. So he kind of he asked me at one point, like, do you see this as one story? Or could it be a series? And I thought, I think it could be a series. And he's like, well, then give me some idea what that series would look like. So that's where the page and the paragraph came from. Having sat with the first book for so long, thinking of new adventures was both exciting and daunting. But I knew based on what had happened in the first book, I knew that I wanted the status of Zenith and Apogee to be changed when they went back to Grabog. Like they're basically just anonymous weirdos in that world, right? They see everything as weird, but they're the weirdos. They're the only Furmans or humans. They're called Furmans in Grabog, but they're the only human characters in the whole world. So they're strange, but they're anonymous. Nobody really knows who they are. They don't really care. If they're not interested in eating them, they kind of dismiss them out of hand. So now they go back. They are notorious criminals. They have changed Grabog in such a way that they are wanted by the authorities. So that's the first surprise that's awaiting Zenith, is that he's a wanted man or a wanted boy or a wanted preteen. And so he has to kind of negotiate that. He's got to go look for his sister, like similar to how he did in book one, but he's not doing it anonymously. He has to hide his face. He has to stay away from everybody, but he can't. He has to go and he has to follow his sister into this town, and he has to somehow stay anonymous. So that was kind of the challenge that was presented to the characters and to myself. And one of the reasons I want to do that is I'm a huge fan of the courtroom scene from Alice in Wonderland. I love how crazy and weird that is, and how nonsensical it is. And I kind of wanted to do my own version of that. So I have a courtroom scene. Spoiler: Zenith gets caught at one point. And so he goes on trial, and I kind of built, that's kind of in the center of the book. I kind of built outward from that in both directions. Like, how could I get him there? What would happen after he's been there? So that was the big inspiration for book two, was like him being a fugitive from the law, such it is in Grabog, and defining what the law meant in Grabog. I thought would be interesting and fun for both me as the writer and the readers returning to the world.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that was so fun. And the courtroom scene was hysterical and also just really interesting. I could definitely see the Alice in Wonderland influence.
Thank you.
So this is going to be a trilogy that
It
you
is
know
going to
of,
be a
or
trilogy,
more?
yes. I mean,
Okay.
I'd love to do more, but right now it's a trilogy. The world is big and broad, and I hint at other adventures that we don't see in the book, especially in book 3. But their story, Zenith and Apogee, come to an ending place in book 3, very much unlike the end of book 2, which is very much a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But in book 3, they come to a happy ending, or I hope it's happy. We'll see. I'm still writing
Okay.
it. I think it'll end up happily for them. So they might return again someday, but for now it's a
Okay.
trilogy.
Okay.
But I do love
Good
the
deal.
world and would love to tell other tales. And there are I kind of try and tell several different tales in the third book. It gets a little crazy. But I hope people will enjoy it as a wrap up to the trilogy. But yeah, for now it's just a trilogy.
Okay. Well, there's definitely, like you said, there's so much hinted at that I would love to read more about Gerbog if you ever felt so moved to write more. um, so one of the things I noticed, book one, obviously one of the main themes is the power dynamics of them as siblings. And this is even more the case, literally and figuratively, in book two, with Zenith and Apogee, locked in this battle. Who will literally end up the older sibling? Who's going to have the power? Who's going to make the decisions? And I think we had talked about previously in our last interview that their names are both variations on like the definition of the highest point of something,
right?
Which would, sort of hint at their battle for sibling supremacy. What was the thought process behind making sibling conflict a major theme of the series? Was that something intentional, or did it just happen organically with the story you wanted to tell?
I mean, I think it's at first it wasn't. It was always, I think, I was trying to find a way for Zenith to enter this world with something at stake, rather than just say Alice just kind of falling into Wonderland out of just pure curiosity. Zenith has the same kind of curiosity, but I wanted somehow to him have no choice in the matter. He had to go in there after unleashing this Pandora's box in his house. He kind of has to pay for that sin, when his sister gets kidnapped. So sibling, the sibling being in danger felt like a very good pull for him to pull him into the bag. And also there to be conflict with the one other human character made sense to me. Most of the stuff I've done has always been character driven. I always want to have there's some sort of strong character story happening, not just, otherwise it would just been a lot of random weirdness, which I enjoy the random weirdness, but I want it to be anchored in some way. Like, why is he going through all this stuff? Why wouldn't he just turn around and go back the minute it got weird? Because he has to stay there. He has to find his sister. And it's his fault. It's his fault that she's, it's doubly potent because it's his fault she's there to begin with. So having put them there, I just relied on my own sibling history. I'm the youngest of three boys, and I'm the youngest by far. My mother was married twice. She had two boys with her first husband, and then me with my father, her second husband. And so my brothers were 8 and 11 years older than me. So I felt the older brother dynamic very strongly, the older sibling, like much more so than Zenith. He's lucky, Apogee's only a few years older than him. My brothers were so much older than me. I never had a chance of getting the upper hand with them. I was always physically, I had no way I could compete. If I was going to roughhouse with them, it was that roughhousing would be rough on me and nothing on them. So that didn't happen very often. Basically I was like having two other adults or two other parents in the house. So I felt that way. So that line in the first book about it's like having a third parent, that is from that's from my personal childhood. So the closest dynamic, the more relatable dynamic, or the closer dynamic for my own history, was I had a cousin who was only just a year older than me. And she stayed at my grandma's house a lot. And occasionally I would go over there and my grandma would babysit us both. And she was a year older. And that was just close enough that I felt like I could argue with her and try and get the better of her. And so that is much more like, and she was very bossy. And the way Zenith feels about Apogee and how bossy she is, that comes from that relationship I have with my cousin.
Okay, yeah. I'm the same way. My one sibling is like 7 years older than me. So we never really had every time I read stories about, fighting siblings, I'm like, man, that is so interesting. I wonder what that must have been like.
I saw it with one of my best friends was also named Rob, and he had two older sisters, and they were much closer in age to him, but he still could never, he couldn't beat them up, it would, because you can't beat up on a girl. But also their psychological game was so much better than his. They were just they had him every which way, and I was I was grateful that I had older brothers rather than older sisters at that point, because they were pretty straightforward. It was like, do what I say or I will punch you. So it was like, okay, I know how to avoid trouble.
Yep. Well, let's see. So they're in Grabog again. They
Yes.
are fighting with each other. They are tussling with the world, or at least Zenith is, because we're
Mm-hmm.
following him for most of the book.
Yes.
And like you said, he ends up on trial for his crimes against Grabog,
Yep.
which was, saving Apogee in the first book from their sort of like God figure, the worm. And
Mm-hmm.
in that process, it's like he destabilized their whole like religion government system,
Yes.
which I thought was so interesting. Like reading that, I'm like, I want to know more about why they worship the worm. Like, what is going on? But one thing I thought was really cool about the trial scene, in the midst of all the fun and the absurdity and the crowd and the, how silly it can be, the Inquisitor, the judge figure,
Mm-hmm.
was so like he was so quiet in the midst of all that. Um, if anyone hasn't read the book, the judge figure is a giant moose or an elk. Was it a moose or an
He's
elk?
a moose. There he is.
Moose,
He gets
yes.
to appear on the back of the book.
Yes. And he speaks to Zenith telepathically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like in the midst of all this chaos going on in the courtroom, he cuts through all that right into Zenith's mind and is like, how should you be punished? Shall your end be quick or slow? Should you be locked away forever? It's like he's pounding Zenith with these questions of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, look at the reality, look at what you've done, answer, answer, answer. And that felt so significant in the midst of everything that was going on. And it seemed like a really pointed example of how, at least to me, my suspicion, and I might be wrong, that so much of what is happening in Grabog feels like Zenith's sort of subconscious manifesting itself. Like
Mm.
this is like an allegory for him having like learning how to deal with consequences and things as a person. So you may not be able to tell us outright yet, like if that connection between Zenith and Grabog is there, but am I on the right track? Will we find out more about that in book 3?
Well, in a way you will, but I would say that the world of Grabog is not dependent upon Zenith. It's not
Mhm.
independent of Zenith, but it does it does in a way reflect what's going on with him thematically in all three books. But that's a writerly a writerly convention. The world is not imagined by Zenith. It's not a fan.
Right.
It does exist.
Okay.
The world shows him things that help him to develop as a character. Like later in the book, he meets characters where they talk about him and a character Old Timer talk
Mhm.
about his relationship with his sister, and more other questions are posed like, should you, like so many people get stuck in a rut, so many people get stuck in the pattern of their life. You and your sister have broke out of the pattern. You were younger, now you're older, and she vice versa with her. Are you sure that you really want to go back to the way it was? Was that
Mhm.
better? Was it necessarily the right way for things to be? Can you imagine a future where you stay the older one? Why do you want to go back? Have you really investigated that choice? And again, the book, both books kind of have this kind of self-examination aspect to them, which is like evaluate your choices, evaluate what you think is the right course of action, make that a conscious choice rather than just an automatic choice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought the Inquisitor being able, first of all, the Inquisitor only talks in questions because his name implies that he will only ask questions. And so he doesn't decide what your sentence is going to be. He probes your mind and asks you what your sentence should be and kind of determines what your sentence will be by this kind of quasi mystical invasion of your mind. But another aspect of that is I think we've all had like kind of that, what you consider like an outside invasive voice in your head sometimes, like these unwanted thoughts that come from somewhere in your subconscious. That was kind of I don't call it an allegory or whatever. It's not, but like it's kind of, that's where that kind of idea comes from. Like how much more disturbing to have your thoughts invaded by somebody than just have them pronounce something to you out loud.
Yeah.
And I was looking for some sort of looking for something scary, to offset the kind of, like you said, the comical nature of the courtroom scene and how absurd it gets. And I felt like that would be the best way for that to come across, that this kind of benign, seems kind of almost half asleep character who's presiding over things is actually the sharpest one and the most dangerous one in the courtroom, and the one you really have to look out for. The respect the other characters pay him is not for nothing. He is dangerous in a way that Zenith hasn't encountered before.
Yeah. I love the almost eldritch horror vibe. That was one of my favorite parts of the book. So, all right. So Zenith is sentenced to an eternity in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see it's called Eternity Tower. Was that right?
It is. Yes.
Yes. I thought that was so cool. So the tower, this structure that toys with physics and gravity and space, and part of the challenge is getting into the doorway.
Yes.
Because when Zenith's guards just left him there, I'm like, he could just run away. No, he can't. Once you're on the tower climbing the stairs, you're kind of stuck there.
Yes.
Until you figure out how to work with its twisting and turning to get in. So what inspired that? That was just so fun.
I mean, it's very literally inspired by the work of M.C. Escher. Are you familiar with his work? I mean, some people, I think I always assume that everybody knows these things, and then some people just don't, but I'm assuming maybe you were familiar.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of M.C. Escher's work, and he does all these kind of, they're drawings, but they feel like they're almost photographs. They're so convincing and so impossible, like the impossible spaces that he creates that you just feel like you could walk into. I was thinking about, like, what am I going to do with a Grabagian prison? How is it going to be different than a prison here? What can I do that's going to be different about it? And that M.C. Escher came to mind. And I just thought that would be a very fun, interesting writing challenge to try and communicate the convincing confusion that he pulls off in his pictures, to do that with words. I kind of, posed myself that challenge. I hope I came close to pulling it off, but I had there was a lot of, I have a couple Art of M.C. Escher books. So I just cracked those open and looked at things and tried to figure out, well, what can be the challenges that Zenith faces once he gets in there. There are no prison cells inside Eternity Tower. They're unnecessary. You can, if you're lucky enough to get off the exterior and not die somewhere sitting on the tower, and get inside, you'll be fed and you'll be taken care of, but you will not be able to escape because it's impossible to escape from. At least it seems to be impossible to escape from, at least at first. So.
Yes. Oh, the first time a character jumped out the window and fell right back through another window, I was like, I knew it. That was fun. Yeah, we won't spoil how or if he gets out, but that was very cool. So yeah, you were talking, we were talking just a few minutes ago about, the introspection aspect and Zenith having to learn, who he is and grow and all this. And again, our previous interview, there was a quote that I loved from book 1. We all shape our own reality by what we choose to remember or forget. What is memory other than a tale we tell ourselves about ourselves? A tale we amend, revise, and rewrite as the days and years roll by. And that scene, that's even more just right there meaningful with the content of book 2. And again, no spoilers, but I love how that is even more of, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Not theme, but it's even more immediate to what's happening. And then one other quote that I really liked from book 2 says, in Grabog, things need to do what they were meant to do. And I know at the time that was just talking about like Zenith's baseball bat that he left there that got all antsy because it wasn't being used for the purpose for which it was created. But again, maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like it is hinting at a larger discussion within the world of Grabog.
It is in a way. It will factor into book 3 for sure. it was meant to be almost like a contrast between our world and that world. Like basically, the Furman world seems very orderly and staid compared to Grabog, and how weird and crazy it is, and how unexpected everything is, and everything doesn't seem to follow any kind of logic. But in Grabog, things are, when they're created, they pursue what they were meant to do. They have a purpose in a way that some, a lot of us humans maybe feel a little purposeless or a little bit lost in our own lives. So in that way, Grabog has an advantage over Earth or terra firmament. That everything that's there knows what they should be doing with themselves. No one seems to be confused in that way that many humans, at least in our modern era, can be kind of confused and lost and rudderless. Nobody is rudderless in Grabog. Everybody is very much knows who they are and pursues that. Even more so in this book, where once we get inside the prison, Zenith meets a bunch of characters which are kind of like based off the silliest of caricatures from prison movies. Here, there's a bodybuilder character who's called Musclehead, who's so muscly that you can't see his head underneath all his shoulder and chest muscles. And there's a rat character who's called Loose Lips, who just gossips all the time. Like every character is very much like a weird extrapolation of a stereotype that I've encountered from prison movies. Again, that was just me trying to have fun with concepts and try and put some sort of weird twist on them. But all those characters are exactly what their names tell you who and what they are, and they are those things. As deceitful and evil as the world seems, really everybody's pretty straightforward. They present themselves as what they are, and they usually, even if really the deceit comes from Zenith's misunderstanding of things. Like he may not quite understand what he's encountering, but the things that are presenting themselves to him are presenting themselves as what they are.
Yeah. And that, it seems like being in a world that is so literal, like that in and of itself forces him to really examine like what he means and what he stands for. Like he has to deconstruct the sort of the manners and the social dance that you learn as a person in the human world in order to figure out what to do in Grabog. And that's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, as strange as everything else is around him, he is the most confused character in the whole world, because he doesn't know what he thinks he knows what he's supposed to do, but he's not quite sure about it. Everybody else is very certain about what they're supposed to do. He is not. And he faces that kind of question in all three books, like, am I doing the right thing? Which it makes him superior to the Grabogians, honestly, because he is leading an examined life. He is questioning his decisions. And I think we would all do better to do so and be less sure of ourselves. Despite my admiration for the surety of these Grabogian characters, I think it's actually you better to be less sure about yourself all the time and to make sure you're doing this right thing by asking yourself that question as often as you can get away with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Well, I had so much fun reading book 2. I cannot wait for book 3. I have no idea where you're going to go with it, and I love that. That is what I look for, is to be utterly surprised when I read a book.
I'm glad to hear it. The challenge with book 2 is like giving the readers a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new, bringing back characters like Kriebel and Raggedy Albert and things that I really enjoyed in the first book and wanted to see more of, and augmenting that and adding on to it. I had a lot of fun showing us Kriebel's gargoyle family, the other 3 gargoyles, and doing something different with Raggedy Albert, and then kind of spreading out from there and seeing it, discovering new characters and new portions, new landscapes within Grabog, and showing a little bit more of the political structure and the societal structure of the world. Those are all challenges that I set for myself and enjoyed exploring all that stuff. I think you'll enjoy the last book. It is definitely the most challenging to write for reasons I won't reveal here. But I feel like my wife is actually one of my first readers is my wife, and she's reading the latest draft right now, going to give me notes, and then I'm going to work on, is it draft? Am I heading into draft 3 or draft 4? I can't remember now.
Oh, wow.
I have to look. But this will be probably the last major revision. Part of the challenge is always getting it down to size. I think I was 25% longer than I was supposed to be with draft 1.
Hey, I mean, the more to me, the more the merrier. That's
Well,
it's
tell my
such a fun
publisher
world. Okay, I will
because
do that.
because I think every page costs a little bit more. I think so. I gotta whittle it down a little bit. Actually, she's
Gotcha.
my editor's been pretty kind to me and being she's like, if you could get it down to 41,000, that would be good. But don't turd the book to do so. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll try my best.
Oh, well, it's such a fun world. So I know book 3 is going to be amazing. And I'm so glad to have gotten to talk with you about book 2. This is just it's such a fun world. I could just
Thank you,
go on and
Rachel.
on.
Thanks for having me back. I love talking about this stuff, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate you spending time with me and promoting the book for me and doing this podcast and doing this for authors out there everywhere because we got to get the word out about our words. So
Yeah. And we have so much fun doing it and we appreciate y'all's time. So yeah, thank you again. And
thank you.
yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk again about book 3.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope everything will go smoothly. There will be book 3 will be out next summer, so it'll be this time of year again.
Yeah, nice. All right. Well, happy reading to all our listeners. Hopefully, you've read book 1. If you haven't, go ahead and do it. Read book 2.
Here they are once again. There's book 1.
Horrible Bag of Terrible
Horrible
Things.
Bag of
It's usually on my
Terrible
staff
Things.
pick shelf at the
Oh, good.
bookstore,
I'm
just
glad
a
to hear it. Thank you.
FYI.
There's the new one. My wife
Twisted
loves
Tower.
my wife loves the purple. This is one of her favorite colors, so she's very excited about the purple of this book.
Me too. I do really like that cover.
And there's a little bit of MC Escher going here in that the
Oh,
stairs the
yeah.
stairs work either way. You
Oh,
flip the
that's
top, you see
awesome.
the tower straight up, and the stair. You can still climb those stairs.
Nice.
Anyways,
All right. Well, thank you so much, and
thank
happy reading
you.
to all the listeners.
Happy reading, everyone.